Hi, welcome back to our very last performance. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing Patrick from Arweave with our last presentation. So please take it away.
Let's see. Hey everyone, my name is Patrick Skinner, and I am a senior developer relations engineer for the Arweave ecosystem. I work for PDS, who runs the RIO as well as the R drive tech behind Arweave. And today I'm going to be talking about something called METT-TC for DevRels, which basically is a Army Ranger or Special Operations methodology for preparation for basically any type of mission possible. It could be combat missions or even like humanitarian missions. And I've taken this principle and I have basically implemented it specifically for DevRels. And it seems kind of like a stretch, but as you go through and you learn a little bit about METT-TC, you'll actually see why it applies so well. My favorite quote in the world is always, if you find yourself in a fair fight, you didn't plan accordingly. And that's something that's always been near and dear to my heart, because every single time I've ever planned for anything, I've never felt like there's ever been any type of like over planning. You've never told yourself that you over planned for something, and because you over planned, something went wrong. That almost never happens. It's best to over plan and always have success than to under plan and risk the probability of having some sort of failure either during the event or for the entire event itself. So a little bit about my background. I'm a former Army Ranger medic, a paratrooper medic, and I was a mass casualty coordinator. I've got several deployments. I was actually the mass casualty coordinator for the earthquake in Haiti. So, I mean, it's interesting how much planning goes into not just the combat side of things in the military, but also the humanitarian side of things. And I'll tell you that in the military, we spend, especially in the Rangers, we spend so much time planning for something that could only take maybe 20 or 30 minutes. You know, a single mission, depending on the situation, could be a couple hours, could be 20 or 30 minutes, could be a couple days. It just depends on what the mission is. And I came into the Web3 space and started working as a DevRel, and it really astonished me how much there was a lack of planning for online events, lack of planning for IRL events, lack of planning for execution of pretty much anything, either by the engineering team or by the developer relations team or by the marketing team. It was astonishing to me. And so I really decided to go back into my principles and started saying, okay, I feel like I want to spend much more time planning and have the perfect execution, so that way I'm not always chasing my tail. The team itself isn't losing resources or constantly chasing their tails on what went wrong on the last event or on the last execution of any mission that they had. So something you're going to learn is, like, in the Army Rangers, we have this book called the U.S. Army Ranger Handbook, and it's 200 plus pages of just mission planning, basically. It's astonishing how much planning goes into missions. So when we plan for anything, we would plan, and not only just plan, but we would do tons of research. We get as much intel as we can. We do all kinds of reconnaissance, and we would take days, maybe weeks, even months of planning. Even if the mission was only supposed to be executed in a 20-minute or 30-minute window, it would take months and months of data and planning. And I feel like we need to spend more time doing that inside of the tech space, because so much resources are lost because of poor planning. And so what I've done is I've taken this principle, which is called METT-TC. METT-TC, for the Army Rangers, it means mission, enemy, terrain and weather, troops and support available, time available, and civilian considerations. Now, when you turn that into DevRel, make a couple changes. Still stands for METT-TC, but it's ecosystem, understanding your target market. Troops and support still stay the same. I like to call my teams troops. And then at the last two, the time available and cost considerations. Because at the end of the day, cost considerations is still a casualty if you have very poor planning. That's the biggest casualty in Web3 is a lot of cost considerations. I understand that there are millions, actually obviously billions of dollars in the Web3 space, and yet I feel like we spend way too much time thinking we have all this money, so we have room for mistakes. But in the reality of the situation, we need to take in consideration that cost in itself is very much of a casualty because of poor planning. Okay, so mission. Understanding the mission is ridiculously important. So I have this quote up here. I love military quotes. I live and breathe by them all the time. But this one's by General Mattis, very famous Marine Corps general. He says, the more clearly we understand what we're trying to accomplish, the greater effect we can have in accomplishing it. People need to understand the purpose behind what they're being asked to do. It is so important to make sure everybody is so mission driven. If we lose sight of the mission, then execution, not only just execution on the overall mission, but execution on the smallest average tasks just become lacking on an average basis by, it could be something as simple as a PR by an engineer. It could be something as simple as a single tweet by a marketing person. The moment they start losing sight or maybe not even understanding the greater goal or the greater mission, that's when things start lacking. And every single little mistake inside every single little task, whether it's a PR, whether it's a post or anything like that, whether it is an update to the documentation or the SDK, those little mistakes add up very, very quickly into basically creating a critical failure overall. So it's very, very important to understand the who, the what, the why, the when, and the where when it comes to missions for the overall team. And this is also very important. This is a great question to have too when you start hiring people or you start talking to people inside of the ecosystem you work for. If the people you're hiring or the people that are building inside of your ecosystem, if they themselves don't understand the mission, then maybe you don't live by the mission yourself that enough, because the people that you are basically supposed to be, perpetuating that mission to don't see it coming from you. So it's very important to make sure that that mission is overly stated, not only to yourself, but to your team and the people building inside of your ecosystem. All right, so the ecosystem. It is perplexing at the very least to say that so many DevRels, when I ask them general questions about their ecosystem, so many don't have any of this done. Market research, SWOT analysis, they don't have competitor intel. At the end of the day, competitor intel is interesting because all of us DevRels, there's this running joke that DevRels probably have more loyalty to other DevRels than they do the company they work for, which is so true. But at the end of the day, it is still important to understand what is the competitor technology like? What are they doing that's making them successful? But it's also good to also understand what are they doing that's maybe causing them to fail. It's important to understand those kind of things and try to act as best as you can to make sure that you're taking advantage of the information that you have, advantage of the intel that you're receiving. Also understanding the overall tech stack. I work in the Arweave ecosystem, so that means I haven't touched Solidity in a while, and I probably should. I haven't done it in a little while, but it's important to understand what tech stack are you working with? So then that also means what tech stack are you expecting people to build with in your ecosystem? That also means who am I targeting? Who am I trying to reach out to? So if I'm in the Arweave ecosystem, should I be constantly pushing information to people that have no care about decentralized front ends or decentralized data storage, and all they want to do is build, AI, or they want to build just with Solidity? That's probably not my target market all the time. time. But there may be overlaps where I do want to target those. So it's important to understand the tech stack and make sure that you are constantly communicating not just to the ether of Web3 and hoping that that information lands to the right people, but you're actually really directly talking to the people that you intend to have building your ecosystem. And then regulatory landscape. There's a lot of times where a lot of people are trying to talk to people that honestly are vastly restricted, or maybe they don't even have the means to be able to build inside of your ecosystem. So instead of just, like I said, shouting in the ether, we want to make sure that we're talking to people that are either trying to maybe solve these problems with your technology or are unrestricted by the regulatory the landscape that is existing in specific parts of the world. So again, down to target market, you want to understand the demographics, the psychographics, and then behavioral patterns of the engineers or of the people that you are trying to have build inside of your ecosystem. This is really, really important because I think this really is linear to, let's say, the mission. Because you can find, let's say, engineers that are building with the tech stack that is linear to your technology, but maybe the demographics, psychographics, and behavioral patterns aren't matching with your mission. Maybe they're not interested in building with that type of technology because that's just not what drives them. So you want to make sure you truly understand what drives the people that are building, the people that are building actively in your ecosystem. And then obviously engagement channels. We all know that Web3 in general is very, very busy inside of X and channels like that. So I'm not going to sit there and push all of my content and all of my information or anything like that and spend a lot of time on Facebook, because Facebook isn't going to really drive a lot of traffic for me. I'm not finding a lot of active engineers in that space. So understanding the channels in which I can best engage with those people. Obviously, I'm leaving out things like Farcaster and such, but Farcaster is a great place for that. And then community leaders. Community leaders inside your ecosystem, but also community leaders that could be linear to your ecosystem. Those are great people to communicate to, because the moment you communicate to them and you've won them over and they start communicating to their community, that's a great way to also grow your ecosystem overall. So troops and support. With internal teams, I actually just got done having this conversation with a couple people, and one of the things that's really interesting is DevRels. There's not a single DevRel that is like another DevRel, and there's not a single DevRel role that is exactly like another DevRel role. For myself, I like to say that DevRels are a bit of a sliding scale of, like, you have the technical content creator, and then it slides all the way to the opposite side of a little bit more of like the introverted side, and that would be like a solutions engineer. And you have to understand that if you're building a DevRel team, that DevRel team needs to be able to complement each other. If I have a bunch of content creators, but nobody is really good at the solutions engineering side of things, then your team is very off balance. You need to make sure you have a very balanced team. Great quote by General Phil Schuyler, and this is: the strength of the team is each individual member, and the strength of each member is the team. So you want to make sure everybody's skill set as a DevRel is actively complement each other, and it's not polarizing. They're not trying to do the exact same thing. They're all executing on the same mission, but in different ways. So that also covers team skills, tools and platforms. So the support side is like, what tools are available to you? And this is also going to go into cost considerations and everything as well. If I can have tools that are 10xing my efforts on a regular basis, then yeah, absolutely, that should be part of the tools that you're actively using. But it's important to make sure you're doing consistent research and finding tools and things that are going to be able to help you execute exponentially on a regular basis. So, this could be anything from like Claude or Cursor or any of those tools like that. I'm able to build starter kits ridiculously fast with Cursor, and then I just review the code, make sure it's sound, and make sure that it's all tailored to the engineers that I'm targeting. And I can get that done probably 5 or 6 times faster using something like Cursor than I am able to do it, pretty much on my own and hard coding it. External partners. This is where the DevRel love really happens, and this is why DevRels love to meet up at DevRel brunches and so on. Because DevRels, we love to communicate to each other and see how we can collaborate. How can our ecosystems work together? How can we pull basically developers from each other's ecosystems and kind of almost like create a singular ecosystem. This is really, really important to make sure that you're constantly developing new external partners to support each other. And that's where, as much as like we like to say, it's important to understand competitor intel or have competitor intel, it's also important to have external partners to find synergies between other protocols or maybe even competing protocols, depending on where there could be synergy. And then resource gaps. Always, always, always try to identify where the gaps are, because those gaps are the ones that on missions we call those blind spots. Because without having proper intel, if you don't have information on something, then that's a gap. And you're not going to know it until that gap is exposed, and then that weakness becomes something that is honestly fatal in a mission. In our case, it could be very, very cost heavy. Having something like, good examples, like there's the Arweave booth right now was not properly tested before the event. So because of that, they're having tons of electrical issues and everything like that. So it's important to check those gaps and make sure that you have the ability to prevent things that could be very costly, either costly with financially or costly by time. Time available, which, by the way, I've got 3 minutes left. The time available is also very important to understand. You need to understand project timelines. You need to understand what the event alignment is. You want to understand how much you need to have done before a specific event so that execution of the event itself is smooth. Resource planning, market windows, buffer zones, these are all very, very, very important to understand very early on. And then cost considerations. This is the casualty of poor planning. If we don't understand fixed costs, so things that we know are going to cost a specific amount, and we need to understand the variable costs and how can we benefit from variable costs, and how do we not get hit by variable costs when they're the most expensive? This could be a variable cost. A good example of this is waiting till the last minute to buy tickets to ETHDenver. Making sure your team is very forward thinking, realizing, okay, who physically needs to be there, who doesn't need to be there. Let's get these tickets in December. Let's not get these tickets, a week before the event. Let's try to be very proactive in that kind of stuff. ROI, understanding the return on investment when it comes to sending either 15 people or 5 people, depending on what's going to be the biggest benefit. And the contingency funds and the funding strategies, we're talking like burn down charts and everything. How much does the DevRel program cost me, so that I understand what am I going in with on the mission, so that as I'm starting to execute, I don't overspend or underspend. And then in implementation, this is just basically having this plan, being able to execute on this plan repeatedly, because the terrain always changes. That's something that's very, very important. When it comes to mission planning, the terrain will always change, but the process of planning will always stay consistent. So as long as you're managing and staying consistent with planning, no matter how the terrain changes, whether it's at ETHDenver or whether you're at Singapore, you always want to make sure that you're constantly executing in the same way each and every single time, so that it becomes like a muscle. Planning is always something that you want to execute on repeatedly. All right, so that's pretty much it. But if you actually want to see a very, very detailed article on METT-TC and how to execute with METT-TC, this is a QR code that you can use. It's a very long article, but by all means, I highly recommend going through it because I do have quite a few resources in the article as well. And I'll give it just 1 second. Okay, cool. So on this one, this QR code, this is actually a PDF document that you can download and you can use to go through the METT-TC planning for anything that you want to do. If you want to go through METT-TC for your entire DevRel strategy, this is a PDF that you can fill out and be able to try to do all of your pre-planning for either ETHDenver, or it could be for the entire DevRel program of yours. So it's something that you can repeat on either small tasks or very, very large tasks. And that's it. If you don't, please follow me on X. I appreciate you guys being here.
Thank you so much, Patrick.
I ended with 3 seconds left.
Yeah, we did it. Nice. If there are any questions, please let us know. We can definitely bring you forward and have some comments in that. But if not, we'll call it at that. This is the last presentation of the day, so let's all go home and eat because we're all hungry. So,
thanks for being here.